Boston's classic rock, 100.7 WZLX. This is Chuck Nowlin, and I think this is the first time I've ever interviewed a doctor of astrophysics.
Good. There's a first time for everything.
No, wait a second. I did talk to Ozzy over the summer.
Okay. I'll accede.
This guy wrote most of Queen's top songs, including We Will Rock You, which is the name of the long-running musical that is coming to Boston, and he's got a brand new knee.
Yes.
It's guitarist Brian May. How are you, Brian?
I'm very, very well, thank you. My knee is coming on very well. You're the first person today who's asked me about my knee. So I thank you for that.
Well, all those years of jumping off the drum riser for a solo, it takes a toll.
I must have abused it somehow. But it's in good shape. I have lovely little pieces of metal in there, which seem to be performing very well.
They make you stand off to the side when you go through the airport metal detector.
They gave me a note, from my doctor to say, this man has metal implants in his leg and it's going to set off the security system, but it never has, Green.
But do you always travel with note in hand when you go to an airport?
Well, they gave me this note, it's like a little note from your doctor to say that you're ill today. Little Johnny can't come to school today because he's got a cough. So I had this note, but I've never had to use it.
That is funny. We Will Rock You, featuring 25 Queen songs, is coming to the Boston Opera House November 5th through the 10th. And we were just talking. I was at the Las Vegas premiere. What was that, 10 years ago?
Must be. That's right, yeah.
Can you believe that over 15 million people have seen the show? I think you're trying to break the Broadway record of Cats or something.
It's incredible. Yeah, the show seems to have no stopping, and it's gone from strength to strength in Britain, and there's been various other productions around the world, which has done well. But this is the all-American version, which was our dream, the proper American version. And I'm very proud of what the show is. I'm very proud of Ben for doing such a wonderful adaptation. Because, in the Dominion in London, we get a lot of Americans, and they get it totally. That's not the question. The question is, you should have some respect for where you are, and you should sort of blend in, because We Will Rock You is based. It's a fantasy, but it's based on the history of rock and roll where you are, and the future of rock and roll where you are. So it was respectful to make this adaptation, and it works incredibly well because the humor is much more American. It's a very funny show, and I think the message is very clear about the satire of the piece, which is about, it's about a parallel universe in which music has become very much programmed, and it's hardly human anymore. Everything's auto-tuned. I mean, can you imagine a universe like that? So that's the universe that these kids grow up in the future, and they're looking for their individuality. They're looking for their spirit to break free. And how do they do it? They've heard that there was something in the past, in a very distant past, called rock and roll. So they want rock and roll. But they have no idea what rock and roll is. So that's the story of the piece. It's a lot of fun. With
Freddie Mercury being such a showman, what do you think he would think of the show We Will Rock You?
He would love it. There's no question. Freddie was very kind of dramatic persona. And he loved entertainment. He loved the interaction with an audience. And he loved success. He would love it, and it would make him smile. I'm sure. He's a very big part of the production. You can't escape that. Freddie's part of Queen music. He's part of the ongoing spirit of Queen, whatever that is. And he's a very big part of the musical, even though it's not a biographical piece. You'll see that the spirit of Queen is very much woven in there, which is thanks to the skill of Ben Elton, our writer. Speaking of Freddie, I've heard that you found some lost tapes of Freddie Mercury, and you're possibly going to release a new Queen album maybe next summer? Well, I didn't think I would be saying anything like this, but we did find, I thought we'd exhausted all the Freddie Mercury vocals that were in existence when we made the Made in Heaven album. And that was a real labor of love for a couple of years. And we spun new Queen tracks around kind of lost Freddie vocals. Well, I thought there weren't any more, but there are a few. So I don't know if it's enough for a whole album, but there's certainly enough to be part of an album. And, maybe some of the album will be compilation, but some of the album will almost certainly be these new tracks, and they will sound new to everyone because they won't have heard these. We're talking with Queen guitarist Brian May. Do you think you could ever put together, maybe if the new album comes out, you put together a Queen tour with like a hologram of Freddie for a whole show? You know what? We've looked at it, obviously, and we don't feel that we want to. It just wouldn't feel right. It's fine, in We Will Rock You, that would be a place probably more appropriate to have a hologram of Freddie, but I don't want to be touring with a hologram. It's like it makes you into a museum piece, and we're not fossils. We're alive and we make music. And to me, it's much more interesting to be touring with Adam Lambert if that should ever happen. Well, actually, it did happen in Europe. We played to 300,000 people in Ukraine with Adam. And probably a lot more on the iHeart Music Festival. That's so much more interesting because the music is alive and organically changing, and that's the way it should be. I don't think songs should be fossils, and I don't think we should be touring with them all the time. No.
Brian, what's going on with the Freddie Mercury movie? Last we heard, Sacha Baron Cohen, Borat, was going to be playing Freddie. Is that still happening?
No, we pursued that line for a long time, and really Sacha was a great help to us in finding our direction, full of enthusiasm. And we're still great friends, but we came to the conclusion that it wasn't going to work, mainly because Sacha is so visible and so recognizable as a persona himself. So it's no criticism of his abilities. It's just the fact that we want people to be looking at that screen and seeing Freddie and being in no doubt that they are seeing the real Freddie. So we felt that it just wasn't going to work, and what we're looking for, and I think we have found, is a fabulous young actor who you won't recognize, but has the skill and probably will become a worldwide huge face in the future. But he's just at that point in his career where we can grab him, and this would be, hopefully one of the linchpins of his journey into stardom. But we wanted the Freddie to be believable. That's the essential thing. And there has to be a serious side to Freddie. There's a lot of fun in it. Freddie was a fun character, but there's a serious side as well. So it needs to be, we're asking a lot of the actors. He has to be able to sing too, which ain't easy.
Well, I was going to ask you that. Does the actor actually sing the Queen songs, or would he lip-sync Freddie Mercury's voice?
Well, we haven't. We know the question hangs in the air. We haven't actually answered that question yet because we don't know until we work with the guy what he's capable of. So we'll just have to follow our instincts on that.
Brian, you're also an author. You have a new book coming out, or just came out, and I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this right.
It's Diableries.
Diableries, which is...
None of us can pronounce French words right. They say Diableries, but Diableries is close enough. It's little devil. It means devilment, and this is a book about, a book channeling a whole canon of incredible scenes from hell, which were created in the 1860s in France. And these have never been seen in the 21st century. They're all stereoscopic, they're 3D, so they will jump to life in front of your eyes when you look at them through the viewer, which is supplied in the book.
I was going to ask you, the viewer does come with the book?
It does, yeah. It's designed by my good self. It's injection molded in Sunbury-upon-Thames in Middlesex, England. Very much an analog device, and it's the exact counterpart of the Victorian stereoscope, the parlor stereoscope, which is still the most perfect kind of 3D you can experience.
I think the closest that we could get to that as a feeling for what it might look like, as a kid, we all had a Viewmaster.
Exactly. It's the same principle, but this thing is a little more sophisticated than the Viewmaster, and it gives you a much more real effect as opposed to a novelty. I'm very grateful to Viewmaster for keeping the flame alive. At least people know what 3D is. I'm even more grateful to James Cameron for producing such wonders as Avatar, that everybody knows 3D and loves it now. But this is Victorian 3D, and you have to see the book. There has never been a book like this.
So Victorian photos from the 1800s, any risque photos? Because back then showing a lady's bare ankle was pretty crazy.
Well, the people who created this actually did create risque stuff as well, and they got put in prison at various times, sometimes for being seditious, and because the Diableries are actually parodies on Napoleon III and his regime. They depict him as the devil, but sometimes because they had nude sitters, so they had a hard time, these artists. They would get raided the whole time and get thrown in jail.
Scandalous.
Yeah, it was very scandalous. Well, it was a serious business in those days, and people were very God-fearing. So the Diableries started because the church was pounding into everybody this idea that if you were bad, this is what was going to happen to you. You get boiled in a pot in hell. So they started off depicting this, and the way they depicted our spirits, our souls, was by skeletons, and they're skeletons who move and have glowing eyes and obviously have a lot of life left in them, the dead souls. And as the series goes on, you see them just doing weird stuff. They're doing they're ice skating in hell, they're firemen, they're fishermen, there's all sorts of weird stuff going on. So it's an experience, this book, and I hope a lot of people will get into it.
Brian, you must have some great dreams.
Yeah, I'm lucky. Most of my dreams came true. Not all of them, but I'm very lucky.
Well, one of them is the show We Will Rock You. Very successful. It's coming to the Boston Opera House November 5th through the 10th. Tickets are available now at Ticketmaster.com. And all this week, I'm giving away tickets on First Word at 4 and qualifying you for a Brian May autographed guitar. So thanks for doing that.
It's a pleasure, and thank you for the support. I think people will very much enjoy this. It's a great escape for an evening.
Well, good luck with the show, with
Thank
the
you.
book, the movie, the album next summer, and finding a new comet as well.
Thank you, and maybe saving wild animals around the world, which is my big passion. Probably the biggest passion of all now.
Absolutely. Brian May and Queen from WZLX.